the first paragraph? Okay, simple past and simple present. So what you'll find if you go through corpus, we don't have time to do all this today, but if you go through, look at the 12 verb tenses, nowhere near all 12 get coverage. Simple present, simple past happen a lot, a whole lot. And then maybe present progressive a little bit. Present perfect happens a lot in academic writing. And you might get past progressive only when, what were you doing when Kennedy was killed? What, that's instruction, that kind of thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't even need that verb tense, okay? And the rest of them you could just not have, and it would be okay. We wouldn't be correct, but you would get an A or a B maybe. And that's my point. I'd much rather spend my time on producing a sentence that has 3 parallel chunks in it separated by commas, because that reeks of academic writing, as you see evidence in gazillions of these papers that I've read. I've gone through all of these. This one happens to be a really cool one though. All right, so paragraph 1 was past and present. Okay, paragraph 2, what did you find? A lot of present. And the reason you find a lot of present is you've got a lot of citations here. So their assignment was to bring in the article that they had read. You had to cite these things, and a lot of those are facts. And so since they were facts, they're present tense. So-and-so says, blah, blah, blah. What about in paragraph 3? What do you find? A lot of simple past. But if we had time to go through the stats, because I was saying, is it normal statistically? Well, by statistics, if we counted things, and then we gave it to an ESL student, how parallel would they be or not? Well, you can see you get a lot of simple present and past. That'll pretty much do it. I hate to reduce it down to that. I'm not trying to simplify grammar, but in terms of you have X number of hours to teach something, then let's sort of go over things that are really, really going to matter. And maybe something like future perfect is not going to matter. So I'll show you two examples I use all the time, so you've seen this before, bear with me. Future perfect tense. Early on, somebody mentioned, well, in this class we would review verb tenses. In almost every upper, intermediate, or advanced class where there's grammar, chapter 1 is always review verb tenses. Many teachers end up spending 6 of the 8 weeks on that first chapter because they still don't know it. If you'd spent 1 day and moved on, you'd have the same net effect, I really believe. So, and again, I'll tell you a story. I became an ESL student for 2 weeks at our university years ago doing a project, and I went and I watched classes. I was a student, I didn't say anything, I had my book, my pencil, went every day, jeans and a t-shirt. The teachers knew who I was, the students didn't know who I was. I could pass for anything but Asian or African, and I did. People didn't bother me because it was this old guy who sat in class. I didn't sit separately, I tried not to. I just wanted to mix in, but what I was watching was I wanted to see what is a student in level 3 getting? Not into 1 hour, but from 5 hours a day for a whole week plus. What does it look like, right? And I'll never forget this grammar class where the teacher had taught past perfect, and it was an outstanding, as a teacher, and it's an outstanding lesson. And then suddenly, when I was leaving class, a Korean girl spoke to me out of the blue, why today? And she said, this was a horrible. And I thought, why? Why would you think it was horrible? I didn't engage her, but I kept thinking, and that stuck with me because at the upper level, I think what people need grammar-wise is not an explanation again. It's got to be something focused. Like if you're past perfect, here are the 3 reasons or 3 ways you're most likely to mess this thing up. Or 3 reasons, like for example, past perfect. Probably the number 1 textbook meaning would be something happened in the past before a previous past action. I failed the test because I had not studied. You don't need to use past perfect there. That's not an obligatory use of had. Because you can say I failed the test because I didn't study. That's not obligatory had would be in an if clause. I know it's subjunctive, but from a grammar point of view, it looks like past perfect. If I had done this, I would have known the information, right? Another one would be after wish clause. Wish I had known. So those are examples of, and then by the time, blah, 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 it had already rained. Those are obligatory hads, okay? So you have to ask yourself, how common is an if clause likely to be in an essay, a wish sentence, and a by the time? And I don't know the answer to that. The only way to find it out would be to look at these kind of papers and see how often it really happened, all right? So future perfect, we're going to cut that to by the time, and if Congress had acted, 2 examples there, okay? Past perfect. Verb tenses, this is what I might cover. Present tense, affirmative and negative. You need to know how to negate. Past tense, present perfect tense, then the present and perfect modals. Now, we didn't do this today, but if you notice how many of your sentences actually have modals in them, you say, well, it's only 3 or 4. 3 or 4 out of 11 sentences is a lot. Modals are more common than most of the verb tenses, by far. But modals are often relegated to the end of the book. It's the second to the last chapter, because the last chapter will be passive voice, something else we never use, right? No. Go through and see how many examples of passive voice are in here. There are a lot. And again, a lot of freshman comp people have been taught as native speakers, don't use passive voice, right? Which is a lie, but that's what they're trained to do. So if a student has a problem with passive voice, they say the accident happened, blah, blah, blah. That person's more likely to teach them don't use it instead of how to use it correctly. All right? So, here's one other thing I wanted to notice. Let's look at paragraph 2 for a minute. How many sentences in paragraph 2 actually start with the subject? First one, according to, not the subject. Then what's the next sentence? Begins with, in order to, not the subject. Next one. Discourses are. 1 out of 3 so far. What's our next one? Swim class can be. 2 out of 4. What's our next one? In his article. 2 out of 5. Therefore, that's going to be 2 out of 6.
And that's it.
And it's a long sentence. 2 out of 6. 1/3 of the sentences started with the subject. Now, that's what I was saying, that thing I explained earlier about how I teach my students to front this stuff. Because if you already know how to use it to make an although clause, all I'm teaching is just move it to the front. And you say, what if they move them all? You'd come a lot closer to this than you would to what we're doing in fill-in-the-blank exercises. All right? So the verb tenses, we have already done the activity. You excelled, of course, well, we'll go on. Other ones, adjectives with nouns. There's a rule in English with adjective word order that, you get a big round Malaysian opal friendship ring gets produced, or delicious aged Dutch cheese snack. What does that taste like? And so, in this case, there's a rule. And I'm only half joking here when if you ask your Japanese students or your Korean students or Taiwanese students, they know this rule, right? And if you give them a discrete item test that says, put this true or false, dimension comes before origin, true, material comes before opinion, false. Now, then you said, write a noun phrase that has, or she has a blank book. Put 2 words in there. You can think of 2 words to go in there, let alone put them in the right order. There's no application here, just memorize these rule for, it's what I call the chemistry kind of thing. Chemistry, you probably memorize the chart, the table of periodic elements, and I never knew why they were in a certain order and how that worked. Also, meaning you have no clue what you're doing. That's why I don't teach science. And so in this case, every time there was a test, I had to go memorize just enough to hope to get a passing score, right? But that's, I think, how, having taught in Japan, a lot of Japanese students have approached English grammar. They memorize these patterns to pass a test. So that they can pass a table of the periodic, whatever, can say it right. They pass the element table really well, but they can't actually do anything with it in the real world. Kind of like you know what chemicals are, but you've never, ever touched a chemical or never done a chemical experiment. So I can identify them if you show me a picture, or if you draw the molecules and you tell you what it is, I just don't know what to do with it. Adjectives before nouns, please make them use 1. Just use 1, put it before, we're good. So, what happens here on this sheet, and what you'll know is, the more academic, this is not academic, it's academic writing, but it's not academic textbook writing, say in a science book or a history book. If you were to do grammar for reading, what you would find is you don't find descriptive adjectives. You don't find 2 of those things we had before. This doesn't happen except in the literature class. An O. Henry short story will have 4 before a noun, right? None of which the students and the American students either know what these adjectives mean, right? But actually, if you look at science books or history books, you'll find that instead of having descriptive adjectives, you'll find noun-noun constructions, which most textbooks don't cover. So the example I always give is, I'm going to give you a noun construction, a noun phrase, and just notice how your brain reacts to what we're doing. So I have a remote control. I have a computer. I don't have a television. I have a television remote control, a television remote control manual. It's a television remote control manual description. Tomorrow I'm going to a talk, so it is a television remote control something discussion. You can keep doing it in English. And that's actually much more common than having 3 adjectives of describing in front. But most textbooks don't cover that, because we always assume you'll just know how to do that. They don't. They really don't. How many study German? So German does a lot of that, so yeah, you're good. 16%. And then, so one activity I'll talk about to show you one activity. It's all of the great writing books. And I would say that also, if you're interested in this kind of writing, if you want to look at, get the free copies, request a copy of Great Writing Book 5. The co-author in there is a native speaker who has no clue about ESL, not tainted at all. And when we wrote the essays for the book, one thing we did was Tyson would write these essays, and we took ESL essays and doctored them up to make them more academic, like they would pass freshman comp. And then I would go through and say, you can't have these words, you can't say enigma, we can't have esoteric. And then I thought, you know what, the whole purpose in getting him to be co-author was to use real language. And so you can't have a sentence that starts with but. I can't put that in my book, right? But Folse, it's our book. Yeah, okay. So it's in there sometimes, way in the back. But the point is that those essays represent what freshman comp professors and instructors would recognize as these are totally acceptable essays, okay? It's not the watered-down ESL vocabulary level. In fact, if I had to go through grammar, I would say that what makes this essay what it is vocabulary a whole lot more than grammar. But there aren't grammar mistakes that really that detract from the paper, that really bother people. The mistakes are, okay, this comes twice, but you keep reading, right? It's not like I am go or something like that. And then I'll show you one called Building Better Sentences, my last activity for today. So what would it look like in a classroom scenario to try to do some of that last sentence with the combining of the last sentence, which was next, comma, I put on my one-piece bathing suit, comma, grabbed my goggles and headed to the pool deck. Well, that sentence is actually more powerful than we think. And we keep focusing on the fact that you didn't put an ing once. No, actually you need an ing maybe 3 times. So let's crank it up. So let's show you one of these. What we're going to do is just really nothing but sentence combining, but here's a unique way to do it to make the writing class a very active class. This activity will take 20 minutes to do in class once you've done it once. The first time it's messy, because they've never been asked to do this kind of activity in the writing class, because most writing classes are, I give you a topic, you write, and I just sit here, and you think I'm lazy, but I inherit 50 of these papers that evening, have to do something with them. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to work in threes. You need to work in threes. And then I'm going to give you, eventually, we're going to do 3 scenarios, 3 writing problems, one at a time. So you're not getting all 3 at once. And then the first thing I do is the 3 people that are working together, 3 of you get together and you decide who's A, who's B, who's C. And what I always tell novice teachers, because I do a lot of beginning teacher training, is you're nervous, because you're nervous, so that you want to get people not looking at you. And actually, it's not all about you. They really will do something else if you can give them a handout. Give them a handout for a handout for a while. So no, seriously, my students, my American students, native speakers who are when they do their first TESOL presentation, were nervous. What happens? They say, "Aren't you nervous?" I'm not nervous. I've done this a gazillion times. You don't use sound in your PowerPoint, and you don't use a video, and then nothing can go wrong. You're good. And you have a handout, and I always tell my students that if the teachers don't get a handout, it was horrible. They didn't even have a handout, okay? So you need the handout. Every ESL class has to have a handout. But you put students in threes, and so one way to deflect people looking at you if you're nervous, if you're a beginning teacher, is you say you're getting groups of 3, decide whose birthday is first in the year, who's second, who's third, and when you do that, that's A, B, and C. And then you can argue, well, now they're speaking some English or not, but they're doing something, so they're doing some speaking activity, right? And I'm getting set up with whatever I'm doing. So once you've decided your 21 students are now in 7 groups of A, B, C, if you have, I'm not sure what your class size would be, my class size could be around 20, so let's say it's 21 max, so 21 max would be 7 threes. That means I need, what do I need for class? I need a teacher, I need 21 students, I need 7 markers that write, and I need a whiteboard, okay? And I need some problems. The problems are pretty easy to do. Why 7 markers? Because what's going to happen is just like when you were in school and you did the math on the board, we're going to put our answers on the board today. And it's one of the few times in a writing class where the writing class is actually a writing class. I get to teach one group, not 21 papers. Let me skip ahead. How many papers will I grade tonight? 0. That's where I'm going. Already you got your attention. Okay. So, students work in threes. So you're in a group of 3s. You decide who's A, B, or C. And before we start, just to keep people on the same page, I say, okay, how many people are A? You hope 7 hands go up. How many are B? How many are C? That's not a step you should skip. Because people aren't, right? So once we decide that there are 7 A's, B's, and C's, we know who's who. This is also really good because if you have shy students or people who don't want to participate so much or just don't talk very much, each student, all 21 people, will go to the board at some point in this activity. Again, no papers to grade. Here we go. So let's do one. Here's what happens. As a class, I always do the same example every semester. So here's what happens. You have a bunch of sentences, 4 sentences here, and then as a group, your goal is to produce one sentence that makes sense. You have to produce a sentence that has all of the ideas here. You can't add new concepts. You can add new words. So for example, if you decided you wanted to put a therefore, you could add a therefore if that made sense in this sentence. You could do an and or a but or a so, which is not here right now, but it's not a new concept. All I'm saying? So I'll give you a second, one minute, work with somebody. How would you put this together? There is not one correct answer. There are multiple answers here. Let's get your attention, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to stop at 4:45. Okay, I thought I had 5 here. Well, I'll just end with this one thing. So what happens is, at this point, someone would say the Mexican flag is green, white, and red. Someone would say the green, white, and red flag is Mexican. Somebody might say red, white, green. There are different permutations that are possible here, right? So you go over that. Then when you start the actual activity, this is the number one one that goes here. You work in groups. You give them 5 minutes to figure out what's happening. Ready, set, go. All of the A people go to the board and write in groups, sentence on the board. And then you discuss it as a group. I'll give you this one last caveat. Here's what you don't do. When you have 7 sentences on the board, you don't go through one by one and go yes or no, yes or no. Because as soon as you say yes to this one activity or no, it shuts down for that group. So look at this sentence and I say, if it's possible, I would say, that's a possibility. That's all you say. You keep moving on, all right? Until at the end, then you ask things like, well, how many different sentences are actually on the board? You hardly ever will have 7 different sentences. You'll probably have 3 or 4. And then you go, which one's right? Well, some of them are right, some of them are actually wrong, but you'll be shocked at how vicious people will get to correct other students' papers, also known as peer editing, which I couldn't get you to do before, right? I will stop on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Keith. We are going to try to make all the materials available from today's entire day, whether it's PowerPoints, handouts, videos of most of the sessions, available on our website. So if you were snapping pictures of the screen, you should be able to find all these PowerPoints online. So thank you again to Keith. I would also like to say thank you very much to all the concurrent session presenters and the poster presenter sessions. You guys did a fantastic job, so thank you very much. As you came in, most of you dropped off your plastic name tag. If you haven't done so yet, somebody's going to help me collect a few more. So, Aaron, thank you. Could you collect? Okay. And Gordon, where did Gordon run to? Excellent. Gordon, your rep, has stepped out, so I'm going to give away all of his fantastic books over here. Is that right?
He's probably right outside.
Is he outside?
He usually is.
Gordon, we'll work on the rack. So, in an effort to make Asher J feel a little better, and no, just because it's a good thing to do, we're recycling and reusing all of these name tags. So we're going to use your actual name tags to pull out for the raffle. If one of your colleagues was here and we pull her or his name, sorry, they need to be here so they can get it. To save time so we can get you out of here on time, what I'm going to do is we're going to pull your name tag and put it on the book. And you can come up and claim it at the end so that we can all get out of here quickly. All right. We have tons to give away. And Gordon, you want to come over and help with this aspect? Okay. The first thing we're going to raffle off is the brand new 3rd edition of the grammar book. We have 6 hardback copies. So, if your name comes up, please accept. I'm going to see how I can butcher your name. Larry's, we're sorry.
Come on!
Amy Music. All right. Number 2. Get some of you from the bottom. Diana Morris. Just stay there. You can get it after. Empty. Bethany Preston. Louis, and I'm not going to put your last name. Help me out.
That's Louis Armstrong.
Joseph Rupert. And Terry Workman. Here. Terry here. Okay. All right. The next thing we're offering up. Oh, 2 more grammar books. Aaron. Wendy Wang. Last grammar book goes to, excuse me, Padma Bhakti. Oh, my mistake. That was not the grammar book. That was another big red book called Teaching English as a Second or Foreign Language. All right. And 2 more prizes. We're going to give away Keith Folse's series, a whole 1 through 5, from the Great Writing series, from Foundations up through 4. Is the 5th one here?
Nice.
We can get the 5th one. So the entire series
Woohoo!
goes to Sally Hatfield. And last but not least, and Keith doesn't know this is happening, you get, no, not a date. If you want to come get your picture taken in the frame with Keith, Jamie Lichty, you're up. All right, again, I want to say thank you to all of you. I've seen your names coming in as you've registered, emailed, lots and lots of you talked about this. It's fun to have seen this program, this event grow from 75 people the first year, 150, and more than that. I don't know exactly how many you are today. As far as I know, National Geographic and MSU, we are happy to do this. We're going to do it again next year if possible. I will be sending you an email with an evaluation for today's event and to get your ideas for what you'd like to see next year. So, thank you for making this a fun event, and have safe travels.
Before we go, we just can't go without thanking Austin. Thanks to Gordon and John. This is really a lot of fun for us. And I don't care if you drive recklessly, just come back next year.